What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Just F It podcast. Today's going to be a solo one because I have so much in my heart that I wanted to share. The past 2 weeks, we've had part one and part two of Bianca Castillo's amazing, and powerful story. We got so much great feedback from you guys, whether it's through Instagram, whether it was you guys directly messaging Bianca and letting her know how much you guys love the podcast, or it was messaging us and letting us know how much you appreciate hearing that story. And since the release of the podcast and the whole thing on YouTube, the whole video on YouTube, I've connected with Bianca multiple times since. And you know what's amazing is she didn't even realize how many people she was affecting in the background. She didn't realize how many people were actually listening or watching and really intentionally taking gold from her story. And it was to the fact that she was so surprised that people were reaching out to her that she didn't even know followed her or listened to her story or knew those parts of her story. People out of the woodwork were just reaching out and telling her, hey, that was great, I really appreciate this. And for me, that was a reminder of why we do this podcast in the first place. Not just to talk about faith, family, fitness, and freedom, but to share stories, to share great people doing great things in the world. Because everyone's got a story. And we don't know who is watching in the background. We don't know who is following in our footsteps, who's taking in the content that's never liked, never commented, never interacted with the stuff you post on Instagram or even Facebook. And if you think about it, as a society, we're so caught up on the numbers. We have all this data and technology to keep track of the statistics. What age group, what gender, what location. We have all these things and tools and technology to track all this awesome, crazy data. I mean, who knows if we really need it all? I mean, I don't know. That's just me. But we have all this technology to track all this data. And you know what? The most important thing, the most important piece of data isn't even tracked. Can you guess what it is? There was like a fly coming in here. Sorry. Can you guess what it is? What that most important piece of data that's not even tracked? And that's the people whose lives you change. That's the impact you're making on people. We know people's ages, locations, genders, professions, right? Whatever. But we don't know how many people we're influencing in the background. And I'd like to argue that that is actually that's the most important piece of data we should be focusing on. Not how many likes or how many comments or how many people engaged and shared my content. It's the amount of people who's actually taking in the content, applying it, and changing their lives. Because if you've been doing this social media game for any amount of time, you know that it's not easy. And I'm saying doing it right, not just paying for likes and followers and all that stuff, but actually putting value out there and growing organically with the right purpose and intention in mind. Sometimes we post and we're like, oh my gosh, I only got this amount of likes, or I only got this amount of followers. How important is that really? And I tie that back into the conversation I've been having with Bianca, because she is such an amazing person. She was actually very, very nervous to put her story out there. And look what happened. Her podcast, and I'm not taking away anything from any previous guests we've had, because we've had some real rock stars on this show, which I'm so blessed to have them here. But Bianca alone, just her first episode, not even counting part two, her first episode shattered a ton of our records. And it's not like she has a crazy huge following. I think what happened was she came from such a place of giving. She was so genuine about her story. She just wanted to give and share and put it out there. Not that other people weren't, but there's a certain there's a certain vibe a lot of people got when they listened to Bianca because she was just being vulnerable and she was putting it all out there for you. And here's the thing, we people relate with us through our pain. They don't want to see the highlights of, oh my gosh, this person is doing all these great things on social media and the stories you share and the vacations you go on. That stuff is great. But people really relate with us through the pain that we share. And when Bianca shared her story, so many of you guys had such a positive impact from it. And that's what I want to encourage you, whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening on Apple or Spotify, or I mean, for whatever platform for the matter. I want to encourage you and challenge you to share more of your story. Maybe you're not comfortable being on social media. Maybe you don't think or see yourself as a huge influencer, but I guarantee you that at one point or another, there's somebody watching in the background, somebody who's got a similar story, similar pain, similar journey, maybe not exactly the same, but something similar. And they're just looking for someone to connect with, someone who's been there and done that and gotten out of it. And you could be that person. We could be that person for somebody else's life. So this podcast is not going to be anything super long or extensive. I wanted to give you guys some food for thought. I wanted to give you some perspective, especially for those who are hesitant about getting on social media and sharing their story and share and being vulnerable to the world. I get it. I get it. I was there too. But if you think about it and you take yourself out of the equation, think about the people on the other end that's going to receive that blessing. Those people that will be blessed because you stepped out of the shadows and spoke truth. Maybe a truth that they needed to hear. Maybe it's a truth that they've been waiting to hear at the perfect place at the perfect time. And that could be you. And that is why we do this podcast, to share, to give freely. Because you don't know who's watching in the background. You don't know who's being affected by the stories that you're putting out there, by the example you're setting. Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your coworkers, maybe if you're an entrepreneur like us, it's your team. You just don't know who's watching in the background and who you're influencing. So I want to encourage you to continue to step out and share your story. Be vulnerable. Share the things you like, the things you don't like. Be you, be unapologetically you. That has been my theme for all of this whole 2020. And I guarantee you, you know what? In the beginning, it was actually really challenging to be unapologetically me. But over time, the more I understood it, it's been the most freeing, liberating thing I've ever done, is to be unapologetically me. It's a journey because you're going to have to break through mindsets and beliefs that have been building up over the years. So you got to break certain habits, break certain identities that have been holding you back. But I encourage you to go on that journey, be unapologetically you, share your story, because you don't know who you're influencing in the background. You don't know who's watching or listening or just hanging out in the background that never liked, commented, shared any of your content. But I trust you, there's people out there. Whether you got 1 follower, 100, 1,000, or 1,000,000, you have an opportunity to change somebody else's lives. Just do it. Just share. Just be you. Bianca doesn't even know how many people's lives she's changed. And we're only counting the views that we can actually track. Who knows what other platforms people are watching and listening on? But don't get caught up on that. Make sure your focus is actually on the intention to help people, not to gain notoriety or to gain more stats or to gain more viewers or likes or follows. Not that. I believe that when our intentions are aligned with where God wants us to be, when our intentions and goals are aligned with where He wanted us to be and He wants us to be in the first place, we just accelerate through life a little bit faster than usual. So I want to encourage you to share your story. because you don't know who's watching. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys next week.